Hello again, I'm Matthew from thewetpen.com, and I think that I told all of you that I was waiting for some bottle caps that actually fit the new bottles that I got a few months ago. And there's been another delay related to that, but in the meantime, I've been really busy working on new inks. But that's not what this video is about. I have a bit of a bad habit. When I see a bottle of ink that I like, I often say to myself, hey, if I buy this bottle of ink, then I can make a YouTube video about it to justify the purchase. But then I don't make the video and the bottles of ink don't stop showing up. So that's what this video is about. It's a quick roundup of some of the inks that I've picked up over the past several months. Some of them might get videos in more depth in the future, but for now, I'll keep it quick. And I'll just say this now, this is going to be too much for some of you. So feel free to skip around if you're not as ink obsessed as I am. So let me start off with inks from Taiwan and China. These two bottles of ink came from a shop in Hong Kong called Inkhouse, as you can see on the box, and I bought them primarily because of the bottles. The inks themselves are made by KWZ, and these two are iron gall inks, which I've been getting really interested in recently. Anyway, one of them is simply called Blue Black, and the other is called Grapefruit. Let me show you what these bottles look like. Very cool original bottles in this twisting fluted shape. These are 30 milliliter bottles and they cost 85 Hong Kong dollars, which is about 11 or 12 US dollars. In the box they include a sheet that shows all of the other inks that are available, with the iron gall inks at the top and the standard dye-based inks below them. And I always enjoy getting a little extra information with my inks. So let's see what these look like. Here's the grapefruit to start with. And this is a pretty cool yellowy brown. I like that quite a bit. And here's the blue black. Typical blue black iron gall inks go down on paper as blue or blue green and then they darken with time. So we'll have to check back on these in a bit. The next two inks were also purchased at Inkhouse.com, and they are from a Taiwanese brand called Inkwall. And this ink is called Roll Tiles, which refers to the terracotta roof tiles that are commonly found all around Asia. And let me just open this box and check out this glass bottle. This is another unique bottle, and I really like it. It's a nice stout bottle with thick glass and chamfered corners all around. It feels really nice, and it comes with this little information booklet too, which I haven't taken the time to read yet. And this one is called Fresh Tea, and you can see the tea leaves decorating the box. Again, it has a beautiful little stout bottle, and I like the design of the cap too. Now, let's see what these inks look like. Here's the roll tiles, and that's a really nice color. Sort of a brownish brick red more than a terracotta orange, but that's fine with me. We'll see how it dries down though. And here's the fresh tea. And man, that is another gorgeous ink. I love how this stuff flows. I'm going to give this a moment to dry and then take a closer look. First, here are the two iron gall inks again. Getting a little glare from my lights on this paper, but both of them have darkened up quite a bit in the heavy areas. And here are those Inkwall inks, and they're really nice. Here, that roll tiles has dried down to look like a reddish brown, and this green is gorgeous. I'm glad I got these two. I'm gonna have to try some of their other inks. You might have seen my previous video about the Lennon Tool Bar Oyster ink, which also had one of the Taiwan tea inks from Lennon Tool Bar, the Dongting Oolong, and I ended up getting a few more in that line. 4, actually. This Puchong tea, this Mucha Iron Godess, which I'm not familiar with, but I assume it's a tea kuan yin. Then bitter orange tea, and finally Misona tea, which I'm also not familiar with, but it looks like a pu'er style tea from the picture on the box. And as long as we're looking at Lennon Tool Bar, I got this one in the same order from Just Spirit in Taipei. This one is in the Indigo Ink series, and it's called Tetsukon, which is an early stage in the indigo dyeing process, apparently. Okay, starting with the Puchong. Again, I really love these bottles, although I guess they're not the most stable. And the ink itself is a nice dark olive. And here's the Mucha. And this one is a lighter spring green, but it still leans a little towards olive. And now the bitter orange. This one is actually quite orange. I was expecting something more like the orange of a black tea, but this is pretty bright, although it is quite a bit more pale where it's thin, I see. And now the Misona tea. It's in another one of these nice bottles. And the ink is a dark, cool brown, almost black where it's heavy. And finally, there's the indigo. I'll need to make some space for it here, I guess. This one is in one of their plain cylindrical bottles, and it was cheaper. Just a hair over $8 per bottle, while the others were between 10 and 11. This ink is a little greener than I would have expected for an indigo ink, but I don't know much about indigo dyeing, so maybe that's normal. Pretty color though, with some decent shading. Here's a closer look now that they've dried. These are all pretty nice, although nothing really stands out except for this Indigo Series ink, which has some really gorgeous shading. That one's really stunning, actually. Okay, back to the ink shelf. Next up are these two PenBBS inks that were up for sale on Amazon for about $8 a bottle, so I grabbed them. The first one is number 85, and then this one is number 256. I actually really like the bottle art on these things with the portraits. Very cool, and these bottles are nice and large. This one is a pretty standard blue ink, a really nice color, leaning a little bit green. And this second bottle is a black. It's a pretty decent one, not super dark, but pretty neutral. Not bad. Okay, now let me move on to the Japanese inks. When I returned from Japan last year, I heard that Pilot was discontinuing a couple of their Iroshizuku colors. So I ordered this one. This is Kirisame. And while I was at it, I ordered a couple of the other colors that I've always wanted, but have just never actually purchased. I got this Shinkai and Tsukiyo. I suspect that most of you will be familiar with these already. The Kirisame is a pale black, or maybe you'd call it a gray. This Tsukiyo is a greenish blue. And the Shinkai is sort of a blue-black, maybe more of a blue-gray. Now, when I was in Tokyo last year at this time in the Ginza Itoya store, the only exclusive inks that I saw were the Sailor Disney collaboration inks, and I didn't buy any. But when I returned and published the video, I got an email from someone who had some extra bottles, and he gave them to me at the Japanese price, which was very nice. Thanks, Jason. I ended up with 3 of them: Aladdin, Dumbo, and Lilo and Stitch. So let's take a look at these colors. The Lilo and Stitch is a sort of a tropical ocean blue. The Aladdin is a darkish purple violet. And Dumbo goes down looking grayish, but it's really more of a purple gray. Next up, I bought a couple of bottles of these Teranishi guitar inks, Salon de Violet, that's a ridiculous pronunciation, and Nostalgic Honey. The Salon is a nice dark violet, as you'd expect, and the Nostalgic Honey is my new favorite light brown. It has some awesome shading. I've given all of these a little time to dry, so here's another look. That Kirisame is actually teal in the dark areas, that's really cool, with a touch of red sheen. And Tsukiyo has some red sheen too. The Shinkai has some red sheen, but also something yellow-green going on in there. That's interesting. That Lilo and Stitch turned out to be a nice dark turquoise sort of color. And here's that Aladdin with a good amount of bronze sheen. And the Dumbo just looks like a pale purple now. And there's the two guitar inks. And that Nostalgic Honey hasn't quite dried yet, but the shading is really nice. Around the same time, I bought these new Kuretake Art Nouveau inks. A couple of these have already been in my previous videos, so I'll just show you these colors and move along, but I have to say that Kuretake has quickly become one of my favorite Japanese inks. They're really wonderfully smooth. This concrete gray is much cooler than I was expecting, too. Really nice. In this box is a Kakimori pigment ink that I bought from Yoseka Stationery. It's an exclusive there, and you can see that on the top of the box, it also has a Yoseka logo. Who doesn't love these little bottles that look like they're half melted? There are two of these Yoseka exclusive browns. One is called Hello, and one is called Try Me. And this one is the Hello. And it looks like I've lost the footage of the ink itself. I'll try to stick something in here so you can see what color it is. Okay, now to shift away from Japan and back to the US, these are two inks from Scribe. Scribe is a small ink company that is owned by Dr. Leighton Davies Smith, who was the developer of the Parker Penman inks. And now he makes an ink called Indigo that is supposed to be like Parker Penman Sapphire, and one called Jamocha that is supposed to be like the Parker Penman Mocha. I'm not really familiar with either of the two Parker inks, but that didn't stop me from buying these to see what they're like. And this is what they're like. Then one day I ran across these bottles of Esterbrook inks, and I really liked their clever little boxes, so I picked up Quirky Leaf, Funky Lake, and Incredible Rock. I also bought this bottle of Pennonia ink from Mike Matteson over at Inkdependence on YouTube. If you're not familiar with his channel, it's definitely worth checking out, but this is an exclusive ink made for him by Pennonia called Cheerio Water Bus. You'll have to look up the explanation for that on his website. He has some other inks that were sold out when I ordered, but they're back now, so those are on my list for the future. So let's take a closer look at these. First, the Esterbrook inks. They come in these cool frosted glass bottles. The shape reminds me of a brand of Taiwanese inks that I can't place at the moment, but I like how they feel. I really like this orangey brown of the Incredible Rock, and this Funky Lake looks like a greenish color. We'll have to see how that dries down. And the Quirky Leaf is a really beautiful yellowy spring green with some shading. That's gorgeous. This is the Cheerio Water Bus, which has a turquoise teal base. But what's interesting about this ink is that instead of having a traditional shimmer, it has an unusual blue pigment in it that appears in the heavy areas when it's dry. Let me give this a moment to dry, and I'll show you those Esterbrook inks a little closer. The Funky Lake is not bad, and the Rock Brown is drying down to a less vibrant color, but I think I still like it. And that Quirky Leaf is still pretty awesome. And here's that Cheerio Water Bus now that it's dry. And look at how cool that is, with the crazy blue that looks like chroma shading, but as I say, it's a pigment of some sort rather than a dye. I've never seen an ink like this before, and that's pretty impressive. Okay, just 2 inks left. Again, this is an ink that some of you may have seen in one of my other videos, but this is a royal blue ink from the Indian company Syahi, the Great Indian Ink. You can see the name written there in a variety of different Indian languages. And finally, there's this one. If you're outside of India, there's a good chance that you've never seen this logo or heard of this brand before. It's called Lapis Bard, and they have a line of inks that are all named after drinks. This one is called Old Fashioned. Now, the label of this bottle says Lapis Bard, England, but in fact, Lapis Bard is a relatively new ink brand that is owned by the Indian retailer William Penn. They purchased the brand in 2016 from England, although I don't believe that it was ever actually produced there. The ink itself is actually made in Slovenia, so it's considerably more expensive than most Indian inks. And these bottles are really high quality. The glass and the shape of these bottles remind me of the Pelikan Edelstein bottles, even though the shape is completely different, and they feel wonderful in the hand. Let's take a look at these 2 inks. Here's the Syahi, and it is a nice vibrant blue, and not quite as purple-leaning as a lot of royal blues. And this is the Lapis Bard Old Fashioned. And that is a really nice, rich, sort of a saddle leather brown. I really like that one. And that's it. I hope that some of you found an ink in this set somewhere that was new or appealing to you. My next couple of videos will be about some different fountain pens, but hopefully within the next few weeks I will also be able to announce some new inks of my own. Take care out there, everyone, and I will see you back here soon with another video about fountain pens and ink.